I recently announced that my family and I were rejoining Classical Conversations after a 4-year hiatus, and many of you had questions. So I'm going to answer those questions in this video. My name is Rachel, and I am a homeschool mom of, oh my goodness, 10 years now. My oldest is 17. I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. Of all of those 10 years that we've homeschooled, 4 of those years we did Classical Conversations. I was a tutor during that time. I was a practicum coordinator. I was a support representative. What else was I? Oh, I was also an essentials trainer. So I have been in leadership, but I got burnt out, and I have a story about it. And I also made another CC video, the pros and cons, things that they're not going to tell you in an information meeting. I am probably unlikely to repeat most of this stuff because your questions are a little bit different than those videos. So all 3 of these videos all together will hopefully give you an idea, any questions, maybe even misconceptions that you've had about Classical Conversations. And I also have to say this, I was part of it for 4 years. I took a break from it for 4 years because I was so burnt out, and I finally felt like I was ready to go back. And when I kind of started to dip my toes in it again, things have changed. Some things have changed anyway since I have been gone. So maybe I'll get into some of that as well. But I'm going to start with the number one question that most people ask. How much does it cost? Well, that is one of the things that has changed since I left. The price has gone up. When I say CC is not cheap, some of that really depends on how many kids you have that are going to be in it, how many programs they have. So I have the most recent pricing here just to give you an idea. So their Foundations program is for children's ages 4 to about 12 through 6th grade. Okay, the Foundations program is where they do all of the memorization to song of English grammar, history, science. They do art, they do tin whistle, they learn some Latin because the way that the program was built, the Foundations program, they're memorizing little pieces that they are going to return to later in the challenge year. So it's building a foundation, getting them to memorize and know things before they get to the challenge year so that they don't have to relearn them at this time. They also learn how to skip count, math facts up to the 15s, up to 15 times 15. And those math facts also include measurements, liquid measurements, laws, mathematical laws they memorize. So anyway, am I missing something? Oh, geography. They also learn geography. So that is the Foundations program, and there are 3 separate years. They're called Cycle 1, Cycle 2, Cycle 3. Foundations is mornings only, and the cost of that is, the tuition is $395. You have an application fee on top of that, that's $145. You also have an enrollment fee now. This is new. This is one of those costs that was not a cost when I was a part of it before. That is $106. You have a supply fee, and then you have a facility fee to pay for the space that your community is renting. Okay, so the supply fee and the facility fee are going to vary based on, the rent that the church or the building that you're renting, what they're charging you. The supply fee may vary, but this is so complex, you guys, because the application fee, if you live in California, is actually $210. But since that's California only, I'm going to give you the rough cost of the Foundations morning program only, with all of those fees, $706 plus your facility fee. So my community's facility fee was $100 per child. They did put a cap per family, but I didn't meet the cap. So $100 per child. So just for the Foundations program, for us, $806. Then there's the Essentials program. That is for 4th through 6th grade, and that is in the afternoon. So for example, if you have a 4th grader and they're in the Foundations program in the morning, and then you also have them in the Essentials program in the afternoon, then you're going to pay an additional $706 for that program. And then for a challenge student, the same application fee, the same enrollment fee, another supply fee, whatever your director, and when I say supplies, these are things that your director or your tutor may be purchasing for you for class so that you don't have to go find it. They're going to buy it for you and supply it to you. It could include copies of whatever it is they're handing out. It can include things that they're purchasing for the community for future classes. So parties, they use those supply fees to pay for ice cream parties or whatever, Christmas parties and such. Challenge students, your cost is $145 for the application fee, enrollment fee $106, supply fee $70. Your tuition is $1,430. You can pay it by semester. Again, in California, your tuition is going to be more, $1,490. And then the facility fee. So again, for us, another $100. So my challenge students' tuition is roughly $1,850. This is more expensive than some smaller private schools in our area. Okay, there is one more thing that I didn't mention in the cost, because it kind of goes without saying that obviously there are going to be books and curriculum associated with the cost also. But here's the thing about Foundations. The only thing that you probably absolutely only have to buy is the Foundations guide. And that has all 3 CC cycles in it. So once you buy it, like, that's the only thing that you will ever need to buy unless they update it again. But they updated it 5 years ago. So I wouldn't think that they were going to update that maybe for another 10 years. At least I would hope not. And a tin whistle for each child, because that is part of the music program. But that's technically the only thing you would need. The MP3s, the CDs that I mentioned, those are helpful. I totally recommend buying them. But if you have the guide, you have all the memory work that you need. Plus the enrollment fee that I mentioned that they make you buy, all the memory work is going to be in supplemental, downloadable notebooking pages that you could get from there too. So there's not a ton of curriculum that you have to buy for Foundations. And kind of similar for Essentials. Once you buy the Essentials guide, that's all you will need for your 3 years of Essentials. The only thing that changes is the IEW writing program changes every year, and it corresponds with the cycle. So when we're doing ancient history in Foundations, they're going to use the ancient history theme-based writing for IEW. When we're doing the American history, they're going to use the U.S. history-based IEW writing curriculum. So that's the only thing that would change. And then once you get into Challenge, there is a lot more books that you have to buy for Challenge. There's a lot of used curriculum out there though, and there are Facebook groups of classical conversations, used curriculum. So there's always moms that are looking to resell things that they're no longer using. So 7th through 12th grade, yes, you will likely have to buy some curriculum for Foundations, just the one-time tin whistle and book. In Essentials, only the writing program every year after you buy the Essentials. So I hope that helps. It shouldn't be $500 every year though for curriculum. So that might help you if you're like, wowza, this tuition's expensive. But you aren't necessarily having to buy books every year either. And even in Challenge, when they do have specific books they're reading, you can get them all at the library. And you can also get Audible and get them. A lot of them are going to be free on Audible if you get an Audible subscription. So there's all kinds of options. Yeah, it's not cheap, but there's a reason that people sign up for it. Now let me also, this is another point of misinformation, just misinformation. So let me explain to you what all these fees are. So I already explained the supply fee and what that's used for. The application fee, that is what goes to CC the business, meaning outside of your community. So this is what's going to CC corporate, your support representative, which is the role that I had before. That's what helps pay them. Your community is just your tutors and your directors. So anybody above your community, that's what your application fee goes towards paying. The enrollment fee, this was new, and I really dislike this fee a lot. They used to have what they called, it's still called CC Connected, but it used to be if you wanted additional resources that moms have made, you can pay, I don't remember what it was, let's just say $10 a month. You can pay $10 a month to have access to these additional resources. Now, what I think was happening was maybe people would pay for a month, they would download what they wanted, and then they didn't subscribe anymore. Or maybe somebody subscribed, downloaded a bunch of stuff, and shared it with their friends. So now what they do is they make everybody pay for it. Everybody pay for the year, whether you want the stuff or not. It's $106. I have to say that was a tough pill for me to swallow because I don't want any of this extra stuff. I am at the stage of my homeschool life where I do not want any homeschool clutter in my life. I will not be printing anymore. Part of the lore of classical conversations to me, and what Lee Bortons writes about in her book, is it being stick in the sand, meaning you can teach all of these things to your kids with just a stick and some sand. Like, in other words, you can write 2 + 2 in the sand. Like, that's all you're supposed to need. But now they're forcing us to pay for all of these other things. They force you, especially if you're going to work for them to help them run the communities, they force you to do all kinds of training, which it's a conundrum because I understand it's like a franchise. They want you to, if you're going to represent them, they want to make sure that you're trained in doing it the way that you're to represent them. On the other hand, I don't want to be forced to go to a practicum, which I'm going to be forced to do. I am not as like, woohoo, CC as I was my first 4 years. I feel like I've seen leadership burnout, and now I'm coming back with a brand new perspective of why this doesn't even make sense. So we're going to see how it goes. I'm still very optimistic because I'm very excited about the community that I'm joining and the people that I'm going to be doing the community with. And I know many of the questions that I have about CC and things that they do that doesn't make sense. I know that probably 90% of the moms in my community feel the same way. So there's a camaraderie there that we're all in this together. There is something special about community, and something special too about the way that CC does this. And there's really nothing else like it out there. So right now, CC even doesn't have competition. You know, like Becca has competition with Bob Jones, for example. They are very similar curriculums in that they're both traditional and they both have like all the subjects per grade. So there's healthy competition there. CC's classical competition, there may be curriculum out there, but do those curriculums also have the community aspect built in where it's easy to find a community of moms doing this? So as soon as somebody creates something with a classical approach and a community aspect to compete with CC, maybe things will change. And I actually know people who are doing such a thing. So I have a feeling in another decade, CC might have some competition, but that's another story. So the application fee goes to the business. The enrollment fee goes to online stuff that they're forcing you to pay for. The supply fee is for your community supplies, parties, and such. The tuition. Okay, so here's how the tuition goes. And I'm going to like tack this on to somebody else's question. I have a CC question. Does the person who recruits you make money if you sign up? And when does the person who recruited you, who recruited her, make money? In other words, this person's asking if this is a multi-level marketing scheme, and it is absolutely not. So the tuition stays in the community. The tuition, I'm not going to tell you the percentages because I just feel like I shouldn't. So we're just going to say half and half, but I'm not going to tell you what the actual breakdown is. Half of your tuition goes towards your tutor, half of it goes to the director. The director has a lot of different hats. So she's going to make more money, obviously, than the tutor. The tutors, what they make is going to depend on how many kids are in their class. So of all of those kids' tuition, the tutor might make half of that tuition, and that's how the tutor is paid. The director can have up to roughly 48 students in her program in the community, in Foundations, we'll say. Of the 48 kids' tuitions, the director might make half of that, but they're capped. So it really doesn't matter how many people you recruit. What you can make in your community is capped. Same thing with challenge directors. They're only allowed to have 12 kids in their class. So what they make is capped. It doesn't matter how many kids they recruit. And also, if you're a challenge B director, for example, which is 8th grade, let's say you run an information meeting, and of the people that come to your information meeting, 2 of the families have 1st graders and 1 of the families has a 10th grader. You gave them the information, you recruited them. You're not going to make money off of them. Whoever's class they go to is going to get their payment, and that director that they're under is going to get paid. So you don't get paid for recruiting at all. I found this like when I was in SR. I had 3 communities, 2 of which were pretty full and 1 that was partially full. I felt like it didn't really matter how many more people I brought in. They were going to cap me. If I brought in too many people, they weren't going to let me be the leader over more than 3 communities. They would hire another support rep who would get that money. So this is nothing like a multi-level marketing. And all of the application fees, like I said, it goes to corporate, and those are all combined, and they pay a variety of different people. There's so many roles within CC, but it is not multi-level marketing at all. If you have any more questions about this cost, I hope that was clear. I know it can feel confusing. I should say this too. If you're a tutor, so like if you're a tutor in the Foundations class, which is the younger kids class, you can't have more than 8 kids in your class. So there's a cap on how much you can make as a Foundations tutor. As an Essentials tutor, that's what I'm doing this year. Technically, at least 4 years ago when I was doing this, I don't know if it's changed, but technically you can have 16 kids in your class, but none of the communities that I've ever been a part of would ever let 1 person be the tutor over 16 kids. They would always get 2 tutors. Ideally, they would have 2 tutors for that with 2 classes of 8. The most kids I ever had in any of my classes was 12. And the following year, I wasn't a tutor my 4th year in CC, but we had 3 essentials tutors. And I'm pretty sure there were 30 students. So there was 10 in each class. Technically, they could have gotten away with 2 tutors. So the reason that they would allow up to 16 is in case nobody wants to step up to tutor, and you can only get 1 person to tutor, then you can still have your programs. Because otherwise, because of these caps, what they would say is if you don't have a mom who's willing to step up and be this tutor, then you're just not going to have a class. You're going to have to say the people who signed up last, you guys are out. So let's say you only have 1 essentials tutor and you have 20 kids sign up for class and no other mom wants to step up to do it, then they would cap you at 16, and the last 4 kids who signed up, tough luck, go find another community, or maybe your mom needs to step up. That's how it works. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, next question says, I'm very interested in CC, but my mom friends tell me it took the joy of learning out of their kids' lives. Have you found this to be true? Do you think this is related to the tutor or the curriculum? And then she has a second question here. Okay, so and then her next question is, would you put a 10th grader that's headed into 10th grade into CC for the first time? There's kind of 3 questions here. Did CC take the joy out of learning out of their kids' lives? I did not find that to be true. Every single one of my kids absolutely loved classical conversations. They loved going to community day. They loved learning in their class. They loved doing all the memory work to music. They loved it. It did not suck the joy out of learning at all. So maybe it actually has more to do with the personality of your kids and how they best learn. Maybe they don't enjoy that kind of environment. Maybe the classical model is not the best model for you. But you also asked, do you think this is related to the tutor or the curriculum? So, okay, so I kind of answered that. Maybe the curriculum just isn't a good fit for your family. Could it be the tutor? I suppose there are some tutors who are more fun than others. If you have a tutor that's really super dry, but I honestly, I can't really say, because the tutors all are teaching the exact same thing. They all go through a training and they are all told how to run every single class. And there's very little variety between each class in terms of what they're teaching. The only thing that might be different is what review game they play that day, and maybe how animated your tutor may be versus a tutor who may just have a dull kind of look and voice and sound. That would be the only difference in the tutors. So I would say it could be the curriculum. Also, what a lot of families do besides just memory work. Now, all the challenge moms who've ever done this would go back and say the foundations memory work is enough. It is amazing what your kids learn. It doesn't feel like they're learning a ton, but they are learning a ton. And because they're constantly reviewing memory work and maybe even going for the memory master at the end of the year, where they have to repeat every single piece of memory work they learned that year, if they want to go for memory master, that is. It is amazing how much information they will retain versus other sorts of curriculums. They may be going a mile deep into the stuff, but how much is your kid actually retaining by the end of the year? How much are they remembering for your first 9 weeks of school in May or at the end of the year if you're year-round schoolers or whatever? So maybe you have a kid who's just thirsty for knowledge and they just want more. Then what parents do is they take CC as their spine. They take the memory work as their spine. So for example, if they're learning American history, and this particular week's memory work is all about the Boston Tea Party, then they will go to the library and they will get more resources about the Boston Tea Party. They'll design all their read-alouds around maybe some historical fiction. The science memory work, I think science for American History Cycle is the human body. So they would go get books, or maybe they would add on a science curriculum about human physiology and anatomy. And so that's kind of how they would add on. So that's really up to mom and how she does it at home. But I just think one of the best parts about CC and the memorizing is I have always bought the CDs or the MP3s, however you want to listen to it. And when we're going to the grocery store, we listen to it at the car. So doing CC memory work, you can do it so much more efficiently than when all of your learning is just from books alone. Listening to it and learning the songs, it just worked for us. And my kids loved it. I just wanted to do a quick wardrobe change to mix it up here. No, just kidding. I was editing my video and realized that some of your questions that I actually read out loud, and then I didn't even answer them. So I'm coming back in. Yes, it is a new day, but I want to make sure I have answered all the questions. So when I was talking about your question about whether or not CC destroyed, or you were concerned about it destroying your child's love of learning, and I kind of only focused on foundations. And I realized that since you also had a question about a 10th grader going into challenge, that maybe that question was directed towards an older student. So did the challenge years, are you concerned about destroying your child's love of learning? And that one is a little bit more complex, I think, because my sister-in-law and I, we both joined Classical Conversations at the same time, and she has 3 children. She has 4 children, but 3 of them are older than all of my children. She had 3 in challenge classes before I even went there. And she would say for 2 of her children, challenge was great. They loved reading, they loved debating, they loved all of that persuasive writing and arguing. But for her 3rd child, she did not enjoy challenges much. And so she might say that, yes, it started to affect her daughter and her love of learning. And that was one of the reasons that after challenge B, she stepped away. So again, even here, I think it depends on your child's personality. Challenge A, which is typically 7th grade, although you could have an 8th grader going into challenge A also. It's a great, and actually some moms would say challenge B also. They would say challenge B is easier than challenge A. So either one of those challenge levels is kind of good to dip your toes in and see how your child does, because in challenge 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is the high school years, it's going to become a lot more rigorous and a lot more work. So one of the things that your child would be exposed to is, 1, the amount of reading. So if your child does not love to read or struggles with reading, then you can try it with audiobooks, but Classical Conversations generally is very, very, very heavy on the literature and the reading. In challenge A, I don't remember exactly how many novels my son was supposed to read. I did not have him read them all because it's just a lot of work. It's a big jump. But I want to say 10, because there's about 1 book every 3 weeks, and challenge is 30 weeks long. So there was about 10 novels to read. There's a lot of writing. And then the Latin, if you go down that road, which you should try Latin, especially if you're starting out in challenge A, a lot of studying and rote memorization. But some people are surprised by how much they enjoy Latin, because it's also a very kind of analytical language. It's working different brain paths, teaching kind of like a math language. I don't know how else to describe how Latin is, except it's not like learning a typical language. You have to recognize a lot of patterns and just a lot of root memorization, which is why people that know Latin, they also tend to find learning other languages easier, because a lot of the other languages came from Latin. And then in challenge A, they start to dabble in logic, and they learn a lot about fallacies and the different kind of fallacies. Challenge B is when they have their mock trial, so they really start getting into debate and debating both sides of an argument. They re-emphasize the learning from the lost tools of writing that they started in challenge A. They don't read as many novels. I think there's 6 novels, but then there's also a history book. For one semester, it's those novels, and the other semester, it's short stories. But by the time you get into the high school years, they're going to start getting into formal debating and formal logic and more complex math, a lot more novels. I mean, 10 novels a year is a lot, especially for 7th grade. I am not sure. I want to say 15 novels in challenge 1. Whatever it is, it's a lot more than challenge A. So again, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and the things that they study they're all part of the classical model. So it's different than most of us who are educated in a modern education system. Those of us who are educated in the modern school system in traditional ways, we're not used to things like logic and formal debate. And it's definitely very heavy in Classical Conversations. In fact, that's what the classical model is all based upon, which the modern education, I don't know if I can explain this quickly in a nutshell, but the classical model of education is based on 3 pillars: grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. The grammar level is the foundation. It's the memory work, it's the facts, it's places and people and all that. Dialectic is when you start questioning ideas and maybe start looking at other point of views. You start learning how to argue your idea. And being rhetorical is when you are so advanced past arguing your idea that you are also actually able to teach it to somebody else. Like you're an expert. You're not just questioning whether or not it should be this, like pros and cons and this and that. You actually have a point of view and you are arguing it in, winning debates, right? So that's really what it's based on. In most education systems, especially the modern education, like public school, they kind of stick here in the grammar level. If you remember from high school, you're still memorizing dates. You're still memorizing parts of the body. You're still memorizing. And while there may be a little bit of that, especially as you go higher up in education, there's always going to be new things you need to memorize. That should become less and less, because in a classical education anyway, you should have that foundation already built, and now you should be debating ideas. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. So if you have a child who would like to debate ideas, then I don't think it would kill the joy of learning. But having said that, it is a lot of work. Everybody has a different perspective on whether or not it will kill the joy of learning or not. I think it really just depends on the personality of your child. Now, the next part of your question, you asked if you had a 10th grader, would you put them into CC for the first time? Again, I cannot answer this because I don't know your child. I had a niece who was a 10th grader who went into CC for the first time. It was challenging for her for Latin. Our community that particular year made accommodations for her to learn Latin with Challenge 1 rather than Challenge 2, which was already beyond her level because she had never done it before. But my niece is a whole different kind of person. Like, she's the kind that is very diligent in studying, very responsible with school, loves to read. So the literature part of CC, she devoured it. She was always somebody with her nose in a book. So for her personality, it worked out very well. Her younger sister, not so much. So a lot of it depends on your child's personality and what they can handle. I had a nephew who went in Challenge 1, her brother actually, and he excelled through it. Again, different kinds of personalities. Now, if you have a 10th grader, I will say this, you do not have to start them with all the 10th graders in classical conversations. So like my daughter this year is technically 9th grade, but I'm putting her into the challenge class that's technically 8th graders. I'm doing that one because the 9th grade workload level for her, having not done any of the challenge levels for CC, that workload would be a lot. It would be a huge jump for her. And also, I know for a fact that Challenge B and a lot of the curriculum that they use can be high school credit. So I'm not really worried about that she's going to be with students a year younger than her. It's not going to matter for her credit-wise, but it's going to help with the foundation that she needs if we continue on in the challenge years with her. So if you have a 10th grader, you could drop them into Challenge 1. There is actually a lot of students who don't even go to Challenge 4 for various reasons. Maybe they're doing an internship or they're already taking college classes their senior year. So doing just Challenge 1, 2, and 3 is what I would say even the majority of classical conversation students do anyway. Okay, so somebody else asked, do you have to be a tutor? The answer is no. And it depends. So the community that I first joined was a very, very full community. There were lots of moms. The first year I joined, I was asked to be a tutor because they had a need for tutors, but I absolutely did not want to do it. I wanted to just be a part of the community and see how it went. Like, I felt like I was learning. I didn't want to add a job onto my plate the first year. So I said no, and they found another tutor. Because the it depends part is, if you don't have a mom willing to step up, then what they will have to do is turn away students. Because like I said, every single class has a cap on how many students you have. So if you have 40 students, you absolutely need 5 tutors, for foundations, that is. If you have 43 students, you need 6 tutors. There's a cap. I think there might be an exception where you could maybe have 9 kids in a class, but I think you have to get special permission for that. There's no way they would let you have 10. So if you only had 4 moms who were willing to tutor and you had 40 students, you better have another mom willing to step in, or there's not going to be a class. And like I said, it's probably going to be determined on who signed up last and who's been a part of the community the longest. So if you're a newer member of the community, and it's going to depend on which moms are actually stepping up, right? So if you've stepped up to be a tutor, obviously your kids are going to be safe. If you're a director, your kids are going to be safe. If you're somehow doing something as a CC job, your kids are going to get priority. But if you are a family where you're not a tutor and there's not enough people stepping up, then you guys may be out of luck for having that community for you. But I have to say, being a tutor is not hard. I've never been a foundations tutor. They get paid a little bit less than essentials tutor. I just love English grammar so much, and I love writing. So that's my sweet spot. It was harder my first year, but once I got through it, I learned so much myself. My second year was a breeze, and it was so much fun. You just have to prepare your lesson plan every week, but by my second year, I kind of just looked at my first year lessons plans that were already written and I just modified them. Like, it was that much easier. Being a tutor besides your day in class for prep, I would say you probably had 1 to 2 hours of prep per week, maybe. You would get to community day a little bit early to set up your class and do the things you need to do for your class before your class shows up. And then you have a few trainings here and there, because I think they do trainings like every 6 weeks because their fine arts changes. Sometimes they're doing drawing, sometimes they're doing like studying artists, the tin whistle and orchestra, and all of those things have different elements to them that the director kind of decides, and they train the foundations tutors on, okay, here's how we're going to do this. And they also have meetings like, are we going to have a Christmas party? What are we going to do for that? So they're kind of the ones that organize all that. But I would say 1 to 2 hours a week, tops, prep. And then if you're also doing a special training or planning another event, maybe another 1 or 2 hours sporadically, maybe every 6 weeks. It's really not a lot, and it helps with that hefty tuition cost that I told you about. Everyday Army Wife says, if you have struggling readers like dyslexia, is CC even an option for them? I would have a 4th and a 6th grader next year, and CC has always been on my radar, but we have never been. Are we too late? Especially since my kids struggle with reading. Is CC a standalone program? We do Sonlight now. Is that something we would put down and only do CC? Okay, so what I would say is CC is not a reading program at all until you get to the challenge years, which start in 7th grade. And you absolutely could hold your kid back. So say you have a 13-year-old that you don't think is ready for all the reading that starts those challenge years. Well, you could hold them back and do Foundations and Essentials 1 more year. They don't have to go forward. But the Foundations and Essentials program, they really don't have reading at all. So that is for you to decide at home and work on. The memorization part, if I had to guess, would probably be good for somebody with dyslexia, because you're memorizing, at least how we did it, we were memorizing auditorily.
Is that a word? Auditorily?
We were memorizing from hearing the memory work through the CDs and the MP3s. We weren't necessarily reading memory work and then memorizing from there. So there's those options. Now, once you get to the challenge years, I would still say, whatever accommodations you're normally making for something like dyslexia, you could probably still make those accommodations in the challenge year. Like, instead of reading the books, you could get the audio books and still be able to do it. Like, I'm not sure, because I'm not an expert on dyslexia, so I don't really fully understand all the challenges that may entail. But you know what I would say for you is maybe what you need to do is go visit a community day. Every community is going to have, they're always going to invite you to come visit, to check it out and see what it's like. And then maybe there might be other moms there with learning challenges like your kids. One of the communities I was a part of for our first 4 years, there were all kinds of kids in there with learning challenges. I know there was a girl in challenge who had dysgraphia, lots of kids with ADHD on different levels of ADHD. I am drawing a blank now on some of the other challenges, but I know that there were all kinds, and the moms would modify the workload and make accommodations according to their children's needs. You're still the teacher, and you can work with the director on that once they get older. But for the Foundations and Essentials years, I really don't think reading is an issue at all. You do your own reading program. So one more thing that I want to add about the Foundations and Essentials level, when I say you only need the guide and a tin whistle, you actually, to do CC, that's all you need. But as a homeschooler, then you are still going to be providing your own math of your choosing to your child and your own English grammar from preschool, 4-year-old, however early you start CC, all the way up through 3rd grade. You're providing your own English language arts. You're choosing your reading program, your spelling program. Okay? Now, if you decide to do Essentials, then the writing and grammar curriculum, that's what that is. But you are not required to be part of CC in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. You're not required to sign up for Essentials if you like your current English grammar ELA curriculum. I hope that makes sense. But as far as CC itself goes, especially from preschool through 3rd grade, it is strictly the memory work. But you provide the math and you provide the language arts. And actually, I would say throughout CC right now at this point, you're the one providing the math. CC is recently starting to come out with their own math curriculum. I got a little glimpse of it when I attended Practicum Weekly, but I have to say right now at this point, I do not get it. I do not understand it at all. So I would probably just continue to stick with whatever math curriculum is going to work for my child anyway. But I will say, like in the challenge years, a lot of what they do in class anyway is just kind of throw out some math problems and let's try to work them together. It's not necessarily a classroom setting like you would expect at a school where they're going to teach you a lesson. It's really more like, let's think through the laws of math that we've learned, the rules of math, play some math games to kind of work that reasoning and logic part of our brain. All right, Plain Jane says, it's wonderful you have peace within you now. We are heavily considering CC Foundations to start. I would love your opinion on if you believe that CC can be combined with Sonlight or if that's too heavy. So I have never personally ever combined CC with anything like Sonlight. I think that would depend on how much time you have for your kids, how eager your kids are. If your kids love reading books, I mean, I don't know, because I have always been of the mind when I was part of CC to keep it simple. I always pretty much did that. I did the minimum that I needed to do for CC memory work, and then I did interest-led learning. So if my kids were interested in a topic, that's what we pursued. But I never added on any other curriculums, ever. I like my homeschool freedom and my daily freedom too. I can't say though that other people don't do that. I will say this. If you just did the CC memory work, half-hour day. And I'm not even joking. Because all you're doing is you're practicing your memory work. And it's amazing how much you can memorize in half-hour day. If that. Like I said, we put CDs on in the car. You do it on the way to the grocery store. And you don't even need to set aside a major part of your day to work on CC memory work. I hope that answered your question. If this has sparked any other questions for you, just leave them in the comments below and I will do my best. If I get a lot more questions, maybe I'll just do a part 2 video. But if it's something that I can answer quickly in the comments, I will absolutely do that. If this was helpful, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Check out these CC videos for more information. Till next time, bye.